Hopkins International presents FASTART. To develop sales professionals. Session 5. Qualify first or pay later. This and all Tom Hopkins International sales training materials are protected under federal copyright laws. Unauthorized use or reproduction represents a criminal offense, and violators will be prosecuted.
It's been said that sales work is largely a matter of using time effectively. Many average salespeople think that the only important thing is to demonstrate the product, present the service with a lot of slick phrases and gimmicks, and if they do that, if they tell the prospect everything, the prospect will just say, "We'll take it." Actually, the biggest waste of time in selling is the time spent with unqualified prospects. You cannot determine what the prospect will buy, or even if they are the ones who will make the decision, unless you qualify. By making a presentation without qualifying, you are walking in blind. In fact, when I think of that word, I can't help but think back many years ago. I was invited to attend a meeting in San Francisco. Every year, the sales and marketing executives of San Francisco would choose a salesperson that they thought was the best in the community for the year. And we sat there as the runner-ups were introduced, and I was, like everyone, excited about seeing who the winner was. It came time. There was almost 5,000 people in attendance that night. There was a hush as the announcer of the evening began the presentation for the winner. And I'll never forget sitting there when he said, "This man last year earned an income of $18,000. I said, $18,000? I have people in my office that did 2 to 3 times that. The announcer then said, "And this man in real estate is totally blind." That's right. And he walked out with his cane down the ramp to get his trophy. The audience stood with a standing ovation. Can you imagine being totally blind selling real estate? Well, all of us were enamored with, wow, with such a handicap to do that. And at the end of this award ceremonies, when we were all leaving, I went over to this man and I said, "Sir, I've got to ask you a question. How did you accomplish such a feat with such a handicap?" And he looked up at me and said, "Sir, I don't have a handicap." He says, "I have an advantage over every real estate person in San Francisco." I said, "Really?" He says, "Oh, yes. You see, I'm blind. I've never seen a property I've sold. I must sell homes through my buyer's eye." And then he said, "Besides, I have a bigger advantage. If they don't like the homes, you see, I'm blind. They can't leave me." He had an advantage. And you know what? He had to qualify with questions to lead them using their eyes. Now, the biggest problem we have in selling is most salespeople want to sell the product they want to sell instead of selling the product the buyer wants to buy. I have a philosophy. Get yourself out of the way. You're there to find the product that serves their need. And if you do that, all that we're talking about works. You see, you must know their wants, needs, ability, motivation, and that they can make a decision. The sad truth is only 10% of the unqualified leads will be able to be closed. whereas you can close up to 50% of your qualified leads. The most valuable thing any salesperson has is time. And time wasted demonstrating to non-buyers is time that could have been spent demonstrating to and closing qualified buyers, or at least in prospecting for them. Through qualifying, you can work hard with people who will buy your product or service instead of working equally hard with someone who won't buy. It's that simple. Now, there are 7 steps in qualifying a buyer. And if you're going to turn pro, you will go through all 7 steps with a prospect. Now, step number 1 is, what do they have now? Now, I'd like you to make a little note next to that sentence. Past experience dictates future decision. In other words, you let me know what you've already got, and I can pretty much tell what you're going to take again. Too many of us in selling are looking to the future product instead of finding out what they've already got. Spend more time. In fact, in the pre-planning step prior to demonstration, we have got to articulate everything they have now, what decisions this buyer makes. Very, very important. Now, once you know what they've got, you've got to move on to the second part of qualification. Number 2 is, what do they like most about it? Now, next to the word "it" in your book, and you joining me, please write, they'll want that again. You see, if they have a product and there's a pet thing that they love about it, you've got to make sure that your product can accomplish that goal as well. And by the way, if it doesn't, when we're going into the closing, that'll be an objection they'll hit you with, and it's a shame that you didn't cover it before you ever got into your presentation. Then you move to number 3. The third step in qualification is this. What would they like to alter or improve about what they have now? See, I like to know what they like to change, because the things they like to change are the things you better have your product be able to accomplish when they do make the decision. So important. You know, that most people, if you say to them, Miss Smith, if you were to consider a new copier, is there anything that you'd really like to change based on what your present one does? Many of them go, well, yeah, we would like. That's a hot button. That's something you will definitely use as almost a major closing point when we get to the table for the final closing sequence. You know, the most important step of all in qualifying is number 4. It's the most important thing you do. Who is the final decision maker? Do you know how many salespeople are selling to the wrong person? They literally are demonstrating, making phone calls to, having lunch with, spending hours with someone who has only the right to listen. They don't have the right to say yes and write the check. How many of you have spent 2 or 3 months with someone, and all of a sudden, as you try to move into a closing sequence, and because you're doing a good job, boom, it pops that they aren't? How many of you ever had it happen? Don't you want to say, what am I been wasting my time with this person? That's why a pro learns how to move through to the final decision maker. And of course, I used to word it this way, and you might want to take these words and change them a little bit based on your product. You'll see a little later on a role play, but just think about these words. If we were fortunate today to find the right copier, dictating equipment, telephone service, whatever the business machine is that you market, who other than yourself would be involved in the final decision? You know, if you ask them that way, many of them will say, well, I don't make the final decision. Now you know you can't do your entire presentation till you isolate the real decision maker. All right? Then you'll move to step number 5. Now, step number 5 is the triplicate of choice. for product or service. Meaning, this one you would not do, and make a little note, I will not do this step unless I have the final decision maker. And a lot of us make that mistake. We go into the triplicate of choice for the product with someone who can't say yes. They then choose a product different than the person who we are going to finally close, and now we've messed ourselves up. Step number 6 is going to take practice. In fact, of all the steps, it's the most important, but it's the most difficult. It's called the triplicate of choice for money. Now, when I say the triplicate of choice for money, I want you to listen to these words. Now, you'll see that they're printed in your book. They're printed there primarily for you to rehearse. Now, let me give you the words. And don't worry about looking them up right now. Let's just go ahead and listen to them. Ready? This is the triplicate of choice for money. You start off, first of all, by picking, based on the triplicate of choice for product, the product or service that will best suit their needs. Let's use a hypothetical case. Let's just say that it's an electronic cash register. And let's say that the total investment for this product is right at, make it easy, $1,000. Now, here are the words for the triplicate of choice for money. Mr. Johnson, most of the companies that have gotten involved in one of our electronic cash registers have been able to invest as much as $1,250. We have those fortunate few that are able to invest as much as $1,500. And then, of course, in today's economy, we have those companies, someone on a limited or fixed budget, that can only invest as much as $1,000. Tell me, which one of these companies are you? Now, you know what's surprising? If you use the triplicate of choice that way, and the first step, as you heard, was you quote a figure. What was the figure we wanted to close them on? How much was it? $1,000. Our first figure was 25% over the figure we want. Then we said we have those fortunate few people that can invest in a product, and we give them 50% over what we want. Then when you hit and say, in today's economy, we have those companies on a fixed or limited budget can only invest as much as, and you hit with the $1,000, you know, when you say, which one of these companies are you, most of them won't say that they're on a fixed or limited budget. Their corporate ego won't let them. They'll usually pick the one that's 25% above the one you want, which is $1,250. And then when you smile and say, what's exciting? The one that will closely meet your needs is only $1,000. They now can't hit you with an objection we all hear, which is what? It costs too much. Oh, and that strategy is gorgeous. We had a woman market dictating equipment and had a $26,000 closing using just those words. Now, step number 7 is isolate the final objection and go into the steps of handling the final objection. We're going to learn that by proper qualification, we can usually smoke out the final objection. Once we get the final objection, we're then going to move into the steps of handling the final objection, which will be covered in another program. Now, what I'd like you to do is we're going to show you a role play. As you see it, you will notice that we're using all but 2 steps, and after the program, the role play, I'll show you why we deleted the last 2 steps. Let's watch, shall we? Mr. Shields, you told me that you're currently using a speedy copier model 250. Can you tell me what you like most about it?
Well, it doesn't cost much to run, and it sure makes the copies fast.
Are you satisfied with the quality of copies that you get from this machine?
They're pretty good, though I have to admit that I've seen some better.
So the copy quality is an important feature for you then?
Yes, it is.
Now, what would you like to see altered or improved in a new copier?
I think reduction, maybe a collator.
Would a 10 or 20 bin collator best suit your needs?
I think 10 would be enough.
Great. Would automatic feeding be a feature you could use?
Maybe. I'd have to talk to a few others to see if they would use it.
Well, that's fine. Now, Mr. Shields, who in addition to yourself would make the final decision on getting involved in a new copier?
Well, for a purchase of this size, I'd have to have our comptroller approve the purchase.
What's your comptroller's name?
Joe Green.
Is he in by any chance today?
No, he's out of town today.
I see. Mr. Shield, once you and I determine which copier will best suit your needs, you could arrange for Mr. Green to meet with us about it, couldn't you?
Sure.
Good. With the information we've already discussed, I feel our 800 model would work nicely for you. Would you want a 3 or a 5-year lease?
I'm not sure. Joe's going to have to handle that.
Fine. Mr. Shield, let me do this. I'll leave a brochure on the 800 model with you today. Then I'll prepare a proposal for you outlining all of the benefits we've discussed, as well as leasing information for both the 3 and the 5-year leases. I can have it ready by Thursday. Would you please make the arrangements with Mr. Green for an appointment so we can all go over the proposal together?
It sounds fine to me.
I'll get back in touch with you tomorrow to confirm the appointment. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to our next meeting. Did you notice, in fact, I hope you'll agree, that that person reacted like many of the people we market to? Did you notice there was very little emotion involved? This is a purchasing agent. This person is not real excited about making decisions. In fact, you also noticed we isolated the fact that Mr. Shields is not the decision maker. And did you notice, as soon as I found that out, I didn't go into step number 5, triplicate of choice for product. I didn't go into step number 6, triplicate of choice for money, because I know I don't have the decision maker. I then reverted to the next technique, which would be set the appointment for the decision maker. Now, I want you to make a note that's very important. When you isolate that you don't have the decision maker, you must make them confirm to set the appointment with the decision maker. This is so important. In fact, I'll tell you another little technique I think you'll enjoy. After this role play, I would have chit-chatted with Mr. Shields. I would have established no rapport, relieved all the pressure, maybe had a cup of coffee with him, forgetting the selling process entirely. Then I would have said, you know, Mr. Shields, I know how busy you are. Is Mr. Green the only other person that would be involved in this decision? In other words, I would reinstate that it was only Mr. Green. Now, if Mr. Shields said, that's it, if old Joe Green says yes, you've got a sale, I would then say, fine, what is your secretary's name? I would get Mr. Shields' secretary's name, and I would say, I will write a letter of confirmation to her confirming the date of our appointment. What is Mr. Green's secretary name? I would get Mr. Green's secretary's name and I would write her a letter of confirmation. Do you see the power in this? Now, when I send Mr. Green's secretary a letter that says, Dear Susan, I have been asked to write you a letter confirming an appointment for a presentation regarding this, quote, your product. Now, she has an obligation to make sure Mr. Green has that on his appointment ledger and make sure your time is allotted. See, one of the problems we have is Mr. Shields gets busy. He forgets to talk to Mr. Green. Mr. Green now, of course, is one of these executives running around so busy all day, you end up coming in the date, the time, 2 weeks later, and then all of a sudden she says, oh, I'm so sorry. Mr. Green had to leave for the day. And you know what? You don't have a confirmation of the appointment, and there you have wasted a whole half day of your selling career. Try that. It's called interim closing. If you can't close with the final decision maker, close them to make sure you have all decision makers at the next meeting. And that's done best with letters of confirmation. It may take you some time, and it may take a little effort, but I'll guarantee you, if in writing they've committed to have that appointment, when you show up, they'll be there. and you'll have found the real decision maker. One thing you're going to realize as you practice these techniques, proper qualification is nothing more than preparing them for the final closing sequence. In fact, you'll also learn that the actual final closing sequence is nothing more than the consummation of everything you've done properly in the steps to qualifying a buyer. I think you'll enjoy it.
Tom Hopkins International presents FASTART. To develop sales professionals. Session 6, the telephone, your best friend. This and all Tom Hopkins International sales training materials are protected under federal copyright laws. Unauthorized use or reproduction represents a criminal offense, and violators will be prosecuted.
What's the single most important piece of equipment in your office? It's not the ones that you sell, although you may think that's the case. Oh, no. It's this right here, the telephone. Today, it has become one of the most important tools that you and I use as professional salespeople to get to contact more people, set more appointments, and save our time. You see, the sad truth about sales today is that companies are spending nearly $200 average in this country for a lead generated by an actual physical call by a salesperson. Now, because of that expense, many companies are relying on telemarketing. They're also relying on people to sit in an office and multiply their prospecting hours by using this device. Now, using a telephone is an absolute art. It is a science. You see, and if you use it properly, it will not only help you increase your income and the image of your company, it will enable you to vastly increase your exposure and more rapidly build, as we keep talking about, your referral business. Let's face it, the telephone saves time, conserves energy, and if used correctly, can get you together with more people than you can ever see by just cold calling in person. Now, the first rule in properly handling a telephone is courtesy. Don't forget that. You see, a lot of us are uptight because of the day we're spending. We've just had a problem, or we've been devastated. A sale is just canceled. All of a sudden, our world is shattered by a personal problem. You've got to start living with what I call logic compartments of the mind. That means you don't think about this past problem. You've got to isolate it and in this moment radiate that feeling of confidence and well-being and happiness when you're on the phone. Would you agree that most people do not care about your problems, yes or no? In fact, one thing I've learned over the years, if you have something wrong with you that day, if you have a problem, don't tell anyone. You know that 80% of the people you tell don't care, and the other 20% are actually happy to hear it. It's true. So, no matter how awful your day has been, you owe it to yourself and your company to present yourself in a happy, courteous manner to everyone that you talk to. Now, if you make the person you're calling mad or you get angry yourself, you're killing your chance of ever doing business with that company or individual. You're also hurting your reputation and that of your company. See, people do talk, and the sad truth is if they're upset with the way you handled them on the phone, they'll let everyone know that your whole company is bad. Gosh, it's important to realize that your voice is creating an image. And I know right now we may have a receptionist or two that is viewing the tapes who is her job or his job to spend the whole day answering calls for the company. Please do me a favor. Yours is one of the most important jobs in the company. Because you see, your voice, your attitude, the way you treat that person calling in starts the whole selling process. If they think you don't care, if you're hurried, if you're rushed, or worse, rude, they come into your salespeople or their salespeople meet them and they have a little chip already on their shoulder. So please, when you answer that phone, say to yourself, I represent this company. And what they hear is going to determine how they feel about us in the beginning. And I hope you all realize, regardless of what you do for the company, again, I'll say it, you're a service technician, you are the receptionist, you are the manager, you are the accounting department. Your business would not exist if you do not market your products, right or wrong. So because of that, everyone's got to have this feeling. Okay? For years, many businesses did not teach the people that are in the service department, those that set up deliveries, those that just answer the phone and take messages. They're in the sales business with you. Everyone's got to have this feeling. Make the customer feel important. You see, the telephone is a convenience to the person making the outgoing calls. However, it's most often an interruption to the person receiving the call. Think about it. How many times have you been in the middle of something important when your phone rang? Have you been interrupted? Don't you want to go, oh no, see, you're going to hit people at the wrong time. And you know, the busy executive, the decision maker being, you call and you're prospecting. You can catch them at the wrong time and they can be irritated. Now, listen carefully to this. If you are calling and you catch someone who's mad, you can't take the rejection personally. You know what you are doing for that person who yells at you? You're giving them a chance to relieve anxiety, to feel better. You've helped them. That's what we in sales do for people. They get to unload on us. How fun. Gosh, that's why it's so critical that you're courteous, you respect, and please realize the time they're spending on the phone to them can be very, very important. Now, when the person you're calling gets on the other end of the line, don't forget this now. You must divorce your mind from all of the things that you've been thinking about. You finally got the purchasing agent, decision maker here. You need them, and you can't spend too much time on small talk. You see, you want to do a little bit of rapport building, ask a few involvement qualifying questions, and then get into what you've called for. Now, the main reason we use a telephone is to set appointments. You've got to get their full attention, and you have got to let them keep yours. You see, you need to speak clearly. Now, a lot of us don't realize that if the phone is down here, they aren't hearing us clearly. This phone should be held, and they've proven, a ½ inch straight out like this. You see, this device is designed to give a good, clear picture of you based on the image the voice creates. I'd also like to suggest it might be a wise idea for some of us to ask someone to listen to us, someone who is a friend, and say, how do I come across on the phone? You might be wise. They've got these little devices. Put it on the top here. Tape yourself on the phone. And I know if you're like me, you won't want to listen to yourself, and a lot of times I'll make an audio cassette, and I'll hear it, and I'll go, I don't like that. That's just normal. You've got to hear yourself if you're going to start improving not only how you sound, using the full range of your vocal cords to come across properly when you answer the phone. Tape yourself. Listen to yourself. Now, if other people don't like the way you sound, work on it. You may have to lower your range. You may have to even go and get some classes on improving your voice. I know I did when I first started speaking. When I first started, I had a very, very high speaking voice, and I spent years trying to get it to a range that was more palatable, nice word, to more people. You have to work on it. You say, you are the product. You are the product. Now, there's no sense on the telephone in taking a chance of losing the appointment just because the decision maker couldn't handle talking with a loud salesperson on the phone. Don't be loud. In fact, you notice I have two voices? Have you noticed in the role plays that you saw during this session? I came across as I would if I were at your office talking to you. It would be a very nice, one-to-one discussion type of voice. It's not this stand-up lecture voice. That's what you want to develop on the phone. Pleasant, warm, with only a degree of excitement. Don't overdo it. You know, a lot of times we come across too enthusiastic, and this is an immediate turn-off to the person. Oh, another loud-mouth jerk salesperson. No, you see. Now, you do want to sound happy, though. If you sound like you're suffering from a terminal illness, they won't want to meet you, you see. Now, if this excitement and enthusiasm is contained, you want to ask questions where you build it gradually when you're on the phone. Now, here's an idea for you, and you may laugh at this, but when I was a manager and had a very fine sales force, I told my people, I said, when that phone rings, the most important person in the world is calling you. I want you to believe it on every call. I want you to smile when you answer the phone, and the reason is, believe it or not, when you smile, your voice level goes up, you sound happier, you sound more like the person that they would like to meet. Now, I went so far when I was a manager to say I'm a fanatic for details. I think a professional does all the little details very well every time. I went so far as to put mirrors on the top above all of my salespeople's telephones. Now, of course, this is optional. Some people watching might say that's dumb. Well, it worked for us. And I told them, I said, hey, when you pick up that phone, I want you to look in that mirror, smile at yourself. You'll look happy. You'll feel happy. You'll sound happy. Now, of course, we always made them take the mirrors down when the buyers would come in, because here's this weirdo sitting there smiling at himself. Now, the next point is to get right down to the reason for your call, which is to get information and ultimately an appointment. Always be moving toward that appointment. See, the main reason we use the phone is to find a way to get in front of qualified people. And if you aren't setting appointments with it, you're not using it properly. I used to get so upset. In fact, I have been, as we've done research for this program, in office machine dealers' stores where calls have come in about products. They've run an ad, they've got a special, and so the phone rings. And the salesperson talking on the phone gives out all the information and doesn't get them to come into the location. Please do me a favor. When the phone rings, you have 3 goals if they're calling you. You've got to get their name. Don't ever, if you get a call on one of your ads. Now, this is an example where they call in, you've got a special running. Don't just give the information, get their name. Now, how do you get their name? By giving your name. By saying, thank you for calling. Yes, my name is, may I ask who's calling, please? Now, many of them will say, well, it's Joe Johnson. If he says, I just soon not give out my name, say, fine, what can I tell you? Now, your goal is to get them to come into the location. See, many of them let their fingers do the walking through your ads that your company puts out. Many times you have a mailing of the brochure, they want to try to call and compare it to another product. If you're a pro, when someone has an inquiry call about your product, you've got to meet them. In fact, I hope you live by a little saying, when the phone rings and they want to know about a product, I must meet the caller. See? Now, if they ask you a question about it, try to answer it with a question. Now, what technique was that we learned earlier? What did we call that? This is the porcupine technique. You answer questions with a question. Don't overdo it, they'll be upset, you see. Now, if you get an appointment, they're coming in, and it's not going to be today, thank them for calling, reconfirm everything. In fact, I'd like you to make a note. Please don't forget this. When you close an appointment, you must reconfirm everything. Now, if you don't, you know what happens? They forget it. Gosh, I can remember times where I'd walk in to make a presentation, and all of a sudden I'd be standing there in the lobby, the receptionist would be talking with me, and all of a sudden realize that they didn't even remember the appointment because I didn't reconfirm it. Or worse yet, they say, you know, I'd like to stop in and see that. Always get a set time. Fine. What time or day would you like to come in? Looking at my schedule, I have an appointment opening on Monday, or would Wednesday be better? Well, I could make it Wednesday. Fine. I could be available in the morning. Would afternoon be more convenient for you? Well, we can make it in the afternoon. Fine. Looking at my schedule, I could clear some time at 1:15, or would 2:30 be better? 2:30 is fine. After you close an appointment, you must reconfirm everything so they don't forget it. That is so important. Just repeat it back to them. Again, sir, as we agreed, I'll look forward to seeing you here at 2:30. I'll allot the time necessary to make sure you see all the advantages of this product. That's professional. Now, once you have an appointment and you've already thanked them, send that thank you note. They'll not only appreciate your time that you spent, but they'll appreciate that thank you note. You see, let's cover the types of calls you need to make. Now, the first one I call the warm canvassing call. Have you ever heard someone say it's time to cold canvass? Why don't we call it cold canvas? You know why a pro doesn't? Because if you learn to say the right words, it's a very warm, nice thing. It's not cold. And you've got to learn to fall in love with that telephone if you're going to make more calls. See, some people learn to hate that phone. I've got people right now that are in telemarketing. Their job is to get on that phone and make so many calls, make so many appointments. And you start playing games with that phone. I don't like that phone. I don't want to make calls. You got to fall in love with the phone. It's got to become your friend because it's a matter of numbers. That's why, you see, it really is a non-threatening way to get information about your potential clients. All you need to do when you call on a cold call is identify yourself, explain your reason for calling, ask the information questions, get the appointment, and get off the phone. Now let me stop here for a moment. Please realize that if you're warm canvassing and making it just a matter of numbers, you do have a high rejection level at times. Accept it. Don't let it bother you. Pick up the phone, make the next call. I'd like to have you consider a market survey approach. Now, a market survey approach is nothing more than having 4 or 5 questions designed to ask them to get some type of response where you can move from the answers into an appointment. For example, you might call up and say, that you call and you get a hold of someone who could say yes, hopefully a decision maker, and you might say something to this effect. Hello, this is Tom Hopkins, yes, with NAMDA Office Machines. We're making a survey of the area to find out how many businesses of your type are using the latest word processors to increase bottom line profits. How long was it since you folks had your word processor replaced? Oh, you don't have one. I see. See? And you ask a few questions. A lot of them say, well, we're not interested. Are you a salesperson? Didn't you smile and say, were you hoping one of us would call? And you know, when you say that, a lot of them will laugh. No! Well, I didn't mean to bother you. I wouldn't want to leave you out while your competition takes advantage of the latest state-of-the-art high technology. You see? Now, if you don't get the appointment, at least ask if it's okay with them if you send them a brochure. But don't chicken out. You know how many salespeople now, they hear me say that and they go, well, I see. Let's just try to get someone to let us send the brochure. What's the easiest thing to get rid of when they get it in the mail? The brochure. Now, if they do let you send the brochure, watch this. How long does it take normally to get a brochure to a person in the mail? What would our lag time be? Give me an approximate figure. 2 days? what I'd love you to do, and some of you, I want you to think about sending telegrams or a mailgram or a thank you gram. You can very inexpensively today send a telegram to someone who was kind enough to let you send them a brochure. But instead of sending the brochure, you take it over there. In other words, let's say I talk to you, it's now Monday morning, and you said, yeah, send me one of those brochures. Now when you say you can send the brochure, I then will do a few qualifying questions. Now let's say I really feel like you need my product. I'll send a telegram or a mailgram and say, thank you for talking with me. Rather than send the brochure, I'll be in your area, I'd like to pop by, meet you in person. Walk in with the brochure. Oh yeah, go in. And what's nice is you can tell the secretary when you go in, say, hi, my name is Tom Hopkins. I was supposed to make sure this brochure was in the hands of, would you tell them I'm in the lobby? Now, a lot of times they'll come out, you meet them, there you go. Now, let's try this call. Let me see how this sounds to you. I'm on the phone and they say I can send the brochure. They've given me permission to send it, okay? I call them back. They've already said okay. Mr. Jones, I thought after talking with you that you, well, might have need for more information than the brochure just says. We're very excited about the new copier. So rather than mailing the information to you, I thought I'd bring it by. So if you have any questions, and because I know your time is valuable, I could answer them then. Would that be okay? Now, a lot of them will say, fine. I'd also use that same phraseology if I went in person with the brochure. You see? Hand him the brochure when you walk in. If he really has a need, you'll most likely be able to go right into a presentation, demonstration, or at least set an appointment for a future demonstration. Now, if you weren't able to get in to see the decision maker, you need to make a follow-up call. Just call to be sure they receive the information and answer any questions they may have. Again, always try for the appointment. I hope you'll realize the phone is not designed to give out information. It's designed to set appointments. And remember, in the follow-up or appointment call, you don't need to close them on the sale at this point. All you want to do is get that appointment, take it a step at a time. When you try to do too much at once, you jeopardize everything. I've seen new salespeople, they think they have an opening, and all of a sudden they go right into a close. It's too soon, too fast. You can't do all things well at all times. That's why you plan your time for each phase of selling. Now, one more thing about telephones. They help you plan your time more effectively. Use them wisely. If you've set aside time to make 15 warm canvas calls, and it takes more time than you've planned, alter the time you set aside for the next day to accommodate any unmade calls. Also, don't let yourself end on a negative note when making calls. If you didn't get the appointment or you got rejected, stay on that phone for another call until you get some positive feedback. Let me say that again. Many of us who are making calls get 10 or 12 calls, suddenly a vicious rejection, and that's where we stop. Say to yourself, one more call, I've got to get a happy one, got to get a happy one. End every day on a positive note. If you ended on a rejection, you'll take that home with you, the anxiety will increase, and that's how we get these slumps. If you allow yourself to end on a negative note, you'll have twice as long to get to the phone next time, and you'll stall, you'll procrastinate, you won't want to call. You know, using the telephone for prospecting is a tremendous area to use the attitudes towards failure. You know, a lot of us have to say it after every call. All right, so you get rejected. We have a dollar value. They say no, they hang up. You say thanks for the 25, and you just keep moving. Pick up that phone again. Now, let me give you a few things to be aware of when making telephone calls. Here are some things you got to be very, very careful about. First of all, don't try to give out too much information over the telephone. See, if you could sell calculators, copiers, and typewriters by the telephone alone, you wouldn't have a job. Isn't that right? You need to get face-to-face with the prospect to get them physically and mentally involved. The second thing, don't forget this. Give them your full concentration. If they discuss a detail with you on the phone and you ask them the same thing again in person, you're destroying your credibility. That's another reason for always making notes on your cards when you talk on the phone. See, if you're talking to someone on the phone and they're thinking of coming in to look at your computer, and they come in 2 days later and you hit them with the same questions that you talked about on the telephone, they've got to say, hey, why weren't you listening? We talked about that. See, one of the things we always have to remember is people have to feel that you care. If they don't feel that you care about them, truly want to serve them, they don't want to do business with us today. Our buying public, regardless of what level in life they're at, is more sophisticated than they've ever been before. They have to be treated with respect. They have to have a feeling that you care. And if you're a pro in this business, you will. The next point, don't try to handle objections over the phone unless the objection is that they just bought one. See, if they say, oh, we just bought the exact thing you're selling, then just get permission to send them information when there's technical advancement. We're still going to put them on a file, on a card. They go in what file, do you remember? Cold file. They're going to get warm. They'll itch someday. Now, the next point, don't risk losing them entirely. If it's a bad time for you to be calling them, give them a sincere apology. Make an appointment to call back later, and put that information into your tickler file and be certain to call them on a certain date and time that you've agreed. Remember, courtesy is the key to the successful use of the telephone. Make them feel important. Keep that company image high by smiling and being happy. And one other point, please, take good messages for your fellow salespeople. That's so important. I used to walk in after a busy day. I'd been working on this lead for the last 2 months. There was a message with an improperly written phone number, or the name was spelled so bad I couldn't see it, couldn't even read it. Let's treat everyone in our company the way we want to be treated and take good messages for others. And I want to hit one more point. Never call back for the final answer. If they say they have to think it over, you don't call back. You go back in person. The easiest thing to get rid of is a voice, the most difficult, a body. Get your body back in front of the customer. Use that phone, multiply the numbers, make it work for you. It's worth its weight in gold.